Hi friends, welcome back to the Hippo Campus Clubhouse, a fun and inclusive SEL-based storytime podcast for kids. Erin here, and today we're exploring what it's like to have a sibling with autism and learning more about how someone with neurodivergence can show their love. We'll meet Sandy, who thinks her older brother Amani is strange because he never speaks to her, never wants to play with her, and just smiles at her when she speaks to him. Sandy's parents explain why Amani doesn't speak, and that's when Sandy realizes how important it is to be kind to someone who appears to be different. When Sandy sees a girl at her school being bullied for being different from the other kids, she has a choice to make. Will she ignore it? Or will she step in and stand up for her new friend? Let's find out by getting comfy, cozy, and ready to open our hearts and minds with Sensational Super Sandy, written by Jamiyl and TracyAnn Samuels. The Sensationally Super Sandy. Sandy Taylor was a wonderful little girl. She was a free spirit who liked to draw and swim, but she especially loved dancing. At school, Sandy had lots of friends to talk to, but at home, she had no one to play with. She played school with her dolls, pretending to be a teacher, but they didn't talk back when she called on them or asked them questions. She tried to get her brother Amani to play with her, but he wouldn't talk either. Whenever she tried to talk to Amani, he just smiled back at her or laughed. "Oh, stop laughing at me," Sandy yelled, but Amani would just laugh harder in response. Sandy was so upset, she ran off to tell her mommy and daddy. "What's wrong, Sandy?" Daddy asked as he ran into the room. "Amani's making fun of me again," she whined. "I tried to get him to play school with me, but he just keeps laughing at me." Mommy held Sandy's hand and drew her close. "Honey, Amani is not laughing at you," she explained. "He has a hard time putting words together." "Yeah, but he's older than me," snapped Sandy. "Yes, but Amani is special," Daddy explained. "Yeah, well, I'm special too," Sandy yelled. "Oh, of course you are, sweetheart," Mommy said. "Amani just has some challenges." "Well, like what kind of challenges?" Sandy asked. Mommy replied, "Honey, have you ever noticed how when Amani walks around, he flaps his hands close to his face?" Daddy continued. "Or when he hears loud noises, he runs out of the room covering his ears." "Yes, and there are times when he just cannot sit still," Mommy started again. "Yeah, and that's all the time," Sandy interrupted. "It's so annoying. I hate it." "Well," Mommy said, "he cannot help it. Your brother has autism, honey." "What's autism?" Sandy asked. Mommy then explained. Autism is a disorder that makes it hard for Amani to speak or interact socially with other kids. Imagine not being able to talk to your friends because you don't know what to say, and when you try, nothing comes out. "Wait, so he doesn't know what to say to me?" Sandy asked. "That's right," Mommy said. "So when he smiles at you, that's his way of communicating with you." Daddy returned. "You know how at school it's easy for you to make friends and talk to other kids, right? And you know how it's easy for kids to talk and communicate and be friends with you, right?" Sandy nodded yes. "Amani doesn't know how to do that. He just needs to be taught. He needs to learn how to do that and how that feels for his body." "Oh," said Sandy. "How did that happen to him?" Mommy and Daddy look at each other. We're not quite sure, Mommy said, but he's in a good school that will give him the help that he needs so that he can work on his speech and communication. Sandy thought for a moment and then remembered her class. Wow, Mom, there's a girl in my class named Annabelle who does the same things that Amani does. Mommy was surprised. She does? Yes, Sandy offered. She likes to sit under the table, and when she does, she's always moving back and forth. And what do you think about that? Asked Daddy. Well, I think it's kind of funny, said Sandy. Mommy warned, Sandy, that's not nice. And Sandy stopped laughing. Oh, okay. Mommy continued. Did you think ever that maybe she can't stop herself from moving back and forth? And that made Sandy think. What else does Annabelle do? Asked Mommy. Oh, she doesn't talk either. She just stares at me. Daddy asked Sandy. Well, do you talk to her? Yeah, said Sandy. And I always tell her, stop looking at me. Get away from me. I don't want her flapping her arms or rolling back and forth under my desk. Mommy looked at Sandy. How do you think that makes Annabelle feel when you talk to her like that? Daddy then leaned in closer to Sandy. And imagine how you'd feel if other kids bullied you because they thought you couldn't fight back. Sandy got very upset, crossed her arms, and said, That's not bullying. I'm not a bully. You're just taking her side because she's like Amani, and you love him more than you love me. Sandy yelled and then ran up to her room. She slammed the door behind her and decided to take out a shirt with some paint. Daddy came upstairs and knocked on the door and peeked his head in Sandy's room. Can I come in? Sandy was sad, but she nodded yes. Daddy noticed the S painted on her shirt. What does the S stand for? He asked as he sat down next to her. I'm making a costume, Sandy grumbled. Tomorrow is superhero day at school, and I'm going to be a superhero. Super Sandy. Wow, that's awesome, Daddy said. No, it's not awesome, Sandy corrected. Sensational. Daddy was impressed. Sensational? Huh, that's a big word, Princess. Yeah, it's better than awesome, Sandy proclaimed. Daddy took a deep breath. Sandy, you said Mommy and I love Amani more than you. What makes you think that? Sandy looked up at Daddy with very narrow eyes. She had a lot of hurt in her heart, and the words just shot out of her mouth. Why should I tell you? You don't care anyway, she said. Daddy got closer. That's not true, Sandy. Mommy and I love you very much. And he reached down and picked her up, twirled her around, and said, You're our beautiful, spectacular, sensational little girl. There is no one else on this earth like you. Sandy had a huge smile on her face as he put her down. But all you talk about is Amani all the time. He gets extra attention at school and at bedtime, and I barely get any time with you at all, pouted Sandy. Daddy sighed. We're sorry that we made you feel as if you're not as special to us as Amani. Pumpkin, a person with autism requires a lot of attention, not just from Mommy and Daddy, but from doctors and teachers and therapists and psychologists. Sandy wondered, all of those people for one person? Yes, Daddy said. We all want to make sure Amani is able to have friends and talk just as much as you do. Sandy smiled. Well, I don't talk that much, she said. But you do have a lot of friends at school and people to talk to. Do Amani or Annabelle have lots of friends or people to talk with at their school? and that made Sandy think for a moment before shaking her head. "No, they usually just sit by themselves," she said. "Do you think a superhero like Super Sensational Sandy would exclude kids like Amani and Annabelle who were a bit different? Or do you think she would include them and maybe try to be their friend?" "Superheroes protect and include everyone," said Sandy. "Tomorrow I'm going to be the most sensational superhero and be kind to everyone." Daddy was now more determined than ever. "Then we better get to work. We're going to make such a sensational costume for you that no one will be able to ignore Super Sandy." "Sensational Super Sandy," Sandy shouted. The next day, Sandy was the star of Superhero Day. All her friends wanted her attention, but she noticed that Annabelle was huddled under a table, covering her ears and looking sad, while two older girls, Maribel and Natalie, were standing over her, yelling. "Ugh! Say something already!" yelled Natalie. "Yeah, what are you, like, dumb?" yelled Maribel. "This looks like a job for the sensational Super Sandy!" Sandy shouted as she ran over to help Annabelle. "What are you doing to Annabelle?" she yelled at the girls. Both Maribel and Natalie gave Sandy a nasty look. "Ugh, mind your own business before we come after you," barked Maribel. Sandy then stood up bigger, prouder, and in front of Annabelle. "You are just a couple of mean girls who can't do anything but say nasty things to people. Leave Annabelle alone." Maribel mocked. "Oh yeah? What are you going to do if we don't?" Sandy then answered, "I'm going to tell the teacher now." And by now, Sandy had the attention of all the girls and boys in her class. Maribel and Natalie were so embarrassed by all eyes on them, and they were scared of the thought of Sandy actually telling on them, that they turned and walked away. When Maribel and Natalie were gone, Sandy went and sat on the floor next to Annabelle. "Hi, Annabelle," Sandy said with a smile. "Are you all right?" Annabelle took her hands away from her ears and smiled at Sandy. Sandy's other friends came over to the table and sat on the floor with Annabelle too. "Well, what's wrong with her?" one of the girls asked. Sandy began to explain. "My brother Amani does the same things at home, and my daddy says it's because he has autism." The other kids looked confused, and Sandy reached her hand out to Annabelle. "Even though Annabelle doesn't talk much, she's still a good person," Sandy explained. "We have to be nice to her." Annabelle looked at Sandy's hand and then her face and started clapping. "Why is she doing that?" another little girl asked. "It's all right," Sandy urged. "Her smiling and clapping her hands is how she speaks to us. My brother flaps his hands or laughs," said Sandy. Annabelle continued clapping and smiling at Sandy. "Oh, you're welcome," Sandy said, smiling and clapping back. The other kids smiled and started clapping too. Sandy couldn't wait to go home and tell Mommy and Daddy and Amani how sensationally super her day had been. The end. So it seems, friends, Sandy had a new understanding around what autism is, and she was able to show more compassion to those who would need it most. Bullying anyone is never okay, and it's hard for any child to experience this, and that also includes non-verbal children who are on the autism spectrum. Sadly, there are many children with ASD that are bullied more than other children, who can also feel alone when those around them aren't aware of the special ways they can communicate outside of speaking. Sandy used her awareness of her brother's autism and empathy for his experience to become a protector for both her brother and a new friend at school. She even found her bravery and stood up to bullies who needed to learn that never should you ever make fun of someone for being different. We all have our own uniqueness and special flair that makes us stand out in the world, and that needs to be celebrated and cherished. Kindness is the best way to let someone know you value and appreciate them, as I'm sure you would want someone to do the same for you. Friends, I hope you enjoyed today's story, and if you did, have a grown-up click the link in the show notes now. For more stories like this one, visit our website at hippocampusclubhouse.com. Subscribe wherever you stream your pods to never miss a story time with us, and follow us on Instagram at hippocampusclubhouse to join the fun. Before we go, I want to say a big thank you to our Ko-Fi and Patreon supporters. Your contributions allow for our free story time to reach children just like yours all around the world. Discover how you can gain more Clubhouse perks by visiting our website or click the support link in the show notes now. Friends, thank you so much for joining me for Storytime, and I loved being here with you. Until next time, keep telling your story with an open heart while listening to others with an open mind.